What's going on, everybody? It's your boy back with another reaction video, and I'll be reacting to three scary true military stories. I figured, I used to be in the military. Go look at these. But anyway, here we.
My dad served in the Vietnam War from
Yeah, I was
1960
like, that's
to
definitely
1962.
Vietnam.
For the longest time, he didn't tell anyone outside of the family this story.
My dad was
He's in
in
his
Vietnam
mid-80s now.
'68
He doesn't care about me sharing
to
it with
late
anyone.
'69.
Not that I intend to release any of our names. I've heard this story told by him 5 times now, and each time I learn about new details he hadn't mentioned the time before. He didn't like to tell this story for obvious reasons, I think. Not only is thinking back to any of those events probably traumatizing, but also he would always say he felt it would be an inappropriate family gathering discussion. My dad did a lot of things in the war. At one point, he was what was known as a tunnel rat.
Oh, a tunnel rat. I almost said mole rat.
Underground search and destroy.
Wow, your dad
missions,
must have been small.
Usually in underground tunnels.
Cause I thought they only had like the smallest soldiers going there because they were always tight.
Expecting to hit a booby trap or run into an ambush, but the tunnels were surprisingly empty and silent. My dad describes the experience of crawling through the silent, dark tunnels as bone-chilling and
apparently a lot of people died. Like tunnel rats
at
died.
any moment would linger. My dad and his comrades heard a faint yelling and crying sound further down the tunnels. It was of a woman. As they crawled deeper into the tunnels, the cries and screams became more clear. And it was obvious there was a woman screaming for help. The three picked up their pace.
In English?
A potential hostage or a prisoner situation. As they continued to crawl through the tunnels, the cries for help got a little louder and clearer. They arrived to a small room that they could slightly get off their knees in. The ceiling was just high enough to half stand, half crouch. There was a small table with a lantern on it that was still lit.
Yeah, I remember reading it. It like almost like whole cities down underground.
Would rustle around inside the box when shaken. Aside from that, this small room was empty. However, the tunnel continued past this room. So they continued deeper into the tunnel, but the screams for help had stopped at this point. My dad described this horrible, familiar stench of death that soon became overwhelming in the tunnels. They entered one final room with no further tunnels. My dad still refuses to describe everything that was in this room in detail, other than there were multiple bodies, and they weren't killed by just bullets. They looked as though they'd been mutilated by some kind of creature. One of the bodies was that of a woman. The scene was so horrible that my dad and the 2 other tunnel rats had to turn around and flee. They had no explanation for what could have done what was seen in that room. On their crawl back out of the tunnels, they started hearing the cries for help from that woman's voice again. My dad says he and his comrades froze and looked at each other with wide eyes and obvious fear in their faces. They had made it to the end of that tunnel. There were no living things from there to the end of it, yet those screams for help were coming from the direction that they just were. They picked up their pace even more. My dad was in the back of the group of 3, and he says he would look back every 10 seconds, thinking he was hearing sounds from behind him, fearing he would see someone or something approaching from the darkness. They made it back to the surface eventually.
That's scary. Because I remember
to his team that the
I've
tunnel had been
heard people like at the VA talk that they were tunnel rats, and he said it was like pitch black.
My dad says this tunnel was
stuff. It was he said he never felt dread in his life like that ever.
Horrific, nightmare-inducing thing he'd experienced in his entire 2 years in Vietnam.
Yeah, because they were, they old and they like to just talk. They just sit down, start talking to you, especially like you're younger. And you in the military too. They start talking about their experiences, and I've heard some stuff like shit.
The Air Force was at Lackland Air Force
no wonder
you
got drafted and did your 2 years. It was like fuck out of here.
For technical school, and after my graduation,
he went to Shepherd.
Air Force Base in New Jersey.
I went to Kessler in Mississippi for my tech school.
Started on the night duty, unfortunately.
I did go to Lackland.
Schedule was basically
Most people go to Lackland.
My duties basically were lugging plane parts like anti-ice valves, igniters, ignition exciters, sensors, and more.
It's funny because for like 2 months straight, I did this. It wasn't even my job, but they needed extra people, and I did this.
A lot of sitting around and playing games on my phone.
Yep, sitting around.
Had to be like 4 a.m.
But when we started working,
I was waiting for the other guy to come drop off some parts to the flight line. He'll be referred to
12-hour
as the
shifts.
purpose of this story. I was waiting by the back cargo area of the plane we were working on.
That is
sitting in
C-130?
a box scrolling through my phone. Mark was taking an incredibly long time with his delivery, so I shot him a few texts. When they went unresponded to, I tried calling him a few times. The calls rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I figured he was either screening his calls, lost his phone, or was just very busy at the moment. I waited and waited, and he never showed up. Eventually, I got a call from Mark's number, so I picked up, but it wasn't Mark's voice on the other end. It was some random guy. He sounded like a grown man in his 40s. He said he saw I tried calling a few times and said he found this phone on the ground outside of the base. I described what Mark looked like and asked him if he had seen anyone who may have resembled him. He said he had not. It's not like he would have been allowed on the base, so my only option was to drive out there and meet him. I asked him where he was, and he gave me the name of a nearby joint where I agreed to meet him. I walked to my car, which was parked in the closest parking lot, and I drove off the base towards the place he told me to meet him. While I was mid-drive, I remembered Mark was sharing his location with me. Long story, but we basically met these 2 girls this one night while off base who we separated from each other with. We, as a joke, started sharing our locations with each other in case we got quote-unquote murdered, as we kept joking. We joked about it mainly because we met them.
So one thing people in the military start to develop is dark humor.
The place the man on the phone told me to meet him was called Tara's Tavern in Cookstown, the closest town to the base. Pulled up the location of Mark's phone. And
I almost feel like he should have called security forces about this, but I guess you don't want to do that just in case it's nothing.
Doing there this late? At this hour, the place wasn't open, and there were 0 cars on the road. I pulled into the little parking lot and parked. I stepped out and called Mark's phone again. The guy picked up, and he spoke in a noticeably lower voice now. I told him I was in the parking lot of the pub, and he said he was as well. He said in almost a whisper, "I'll be right over," and he hung up. It was weirder in the moment than it sounds explaining it. I looked at the location on my phone to see if it was updating, but it seemed the location of Mark's phone was in this small patch of woods about 200 feet long and 200 feet wide.
Yeah, watching your ass.
It went straight to voicemail.
He didn't know that the locator was on.
I was all alone. Not even an occasional passing car. I looked to the woods when I heard something over the sound of the crickets, like someone's footsteps. And then I saw a man. It was him. He was standing just behind the tree line between the woods and the parking lot.
I just stole your friend's phone.
Alone. And the sight of him, only his upper body visible, it was freaky as hell. I called back, "No, why?" as I inched my way closer to my car. This was one giant red flag.
Yeah, obviously.
Who are you with? I didn't answer that. I got in my car and drove back.
I'd have been like, I'm with security forces.
I called my supervisor and told him Mark was missing and someone was hiding in a patch of woods with his phone. My supervisor told me he was with Mark at that moment. He told me to meet them at the small building.
Somebody stole his phone.
I met with the 2 and told them once again what I witnessed when tracking his phone. Mark told me what happened. While off the base, he was approached by somebody outside of a 24/7 convenience store, asking for a ride back to the base. Mark believed that he was actually in the Air Force at first and let him in the car. But as they were driving, the man asked Mark to pull over by the woods so he could pee real quick. Mark obliged for some reason. As Mark was pulled to the side of the road by the same small patch of woods by Tara's Tavern, he wasn't paying attention for a minute, and his door was opened by the man. Without a second to even react, the man was grabbing Mark's arms and squeezing them as he tried to pull him out of the car.
Whoa, what?
Mark said he kicked at the man's groin area until he let go. He dropped his phone and it fell out of the car during the struggle.
Oh, this dude seemed like he just trying to get on base.
Still open at first. And next thing that happened was he went back to the base to talk with our supervisor.
Was he trying to get a uniform?
Went to Tara's Tavern to check if the man was still there. The location of Mark's phone was no longer popping up on the map. It's possible the man destroyed the phone. All we did was file a police report. Some people out there are actually crazy and dangerous. Who knows what he would have done to either of us if he had gotten us in the woods.
Yeah, but like it's weird. It's like he's trying to get on base. Like, why was he trying to pull Mark out of the car? Maybe he thought if he was in uniform, he'd get his uniform. Maybe, but then he'd assume that it fits.
I had many different jobs on site, but my least favorite was graveyard patrol. At one point, I was one of the few with the overnight graveyard patrol shift for a nearby memorial cemetery. As you would imagine, it was a pretty slow shift with not much going on. Oddly enough, even though the cemetery was in a remote location surrounded by dense forest on each side, it and I was working the literal graveyard shift.
I'm surprised they
I
have
found the job
military
more
do that.
relaxing than scary or unnerving.
You'd think they hire like
I would be the only
civilians to
one in
do
the
that.
cemetery. My relief would come around 4 a.m., which would be the end of my shift. So this had to have happened past 3 a.m., nearing the end of my shift. It was on this otherwise regular night that I was patrolling near the perimeter fence where some of the older headstones were. I wasn't allowed to be on my phone. If I were to be caught with my phone, I would be reprimanded. Even though it was unlikely to be caught since there was no one else really around except for me, I tried my best to follow that rule. So it was just a lot of walking around and looking at old headstones.
Well, I guess they want
But
you to pay
anyway,
attention,
while patrolling past some of the older
which
ones,
I'm guessing is
I
a good
began to
thing
hear a
because he
woman's humming.
needed to pay attention.
It was this very calming, soothing kind of humming. Only I wasn't calmed or soothed because nobody was supposed to be in the cemetery. So it was more so a cause
So
for concern.
which?
I started following the sounds of the humming. It was coming from behind this intentionally planted line of thick trees with vines and brushes sprouting from the sides of them. Instead of walking around the long wall of trees, I squeezed through the vines and bushes to the other side, cutting myself in the process. As I struggled to make it to the other side, the humming suddenly stopped as quickly as it started. I was left alone to the silence once again, not even the sound of a cricket. I walked closer to the edge of the memorial property, by the woods, near a few of the big mausoleum-looking structures, and I could distinctly hear some kind of buzzing sound coming from one of them. I stepped up the 3 white steps into the structure. The little door didn't have any kind of locks on it.
Transmitter?
I'd never
Fuck
been in any
on
of these structures until this point, and I was incorrect in my assumption that they were mausoleums. I still don't know what the purpose of them were. Maybe some kind of memorial building for deceased veterans in the cemetery. As I was inside that cold, dark structure, I could actually feel the hairs my arms begin to stand up as I got goosebumps for reasons I wasn't sure of just yet. That buzzing sound was coming from inside of the
your
structure.
body, your
But it almost seemed
instincts
like
are
it was coming
like
from beneath my
some
feet.
bullshit's about to
I
start.
looked down to the wood floor, and there were tiny round holes in each plank of wood, it seemed. Big enough to look through, but way too dark down there to see what lay below the floorboards. I had an idea. I positioned my phone on the floorboard just right so that the flashlight would shoot light into the hole in the wood, and I would look through one of the other holes.
Let me guess, it was an eye.
I lay basically flat on the floor with my head pressed up to the wood,
Wait,
one eye closed.
what? That was dumb.
I expected to see nothing at all.
Where'd you get that close?
I saw what appeared to be the top of a woman's head, and as if she knew I started looking immediately, she looked up at me through the hole.
What if she like stabbed
I
you or
only saw her
something?
face for maybe half a second before I fell backwards and let out a blood-curdling scream. I sprinted back to the parking lot and called the guy who was supposed to relieve me soon, and I told him to meet me now. When he showed up, I tried to convince him that I was telling the truth about what I'd seen in that little building. He entertained me by coming with me to it, and I repeated what I did earlier with my phone flashlight. He looked through multiple holes but saw nothing.
Of course.
I had to check for myself, and he was right. It was just some small, empty-looking space underneath the structure. I spent the rest of the shift with him. I left at 4 on the dot. I know he didn't believe me. I wouldn't have believed me either.
Well, yeah, he didn't
Sure,
see
it's a
anything. Why would he
possibility that it was a
believe you?
hallucination as a result of my lack of sleep. But I also believe it's a possibility that I witnessed a spirit or something completely supernatural. I'd heard so many older Marines and veterans tell of supernatural experiences they had while serving. I don't know who the woman that I saw could have been if it truly wasn't my imagination, but it chills me to the bone to imagine it having been one of the women buried in the cemetery.
Humming and shit. Yeah, she's about to fuck you up. Like she was embarrassed. Oh, you looking? Why would you get down on the ground? See that shit like that's shit you see in horror movies where there's a hole here and I hear it sounds like something noise is coming from the hole, but nothing should be here. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put my eyeball like right up against the fucking hole of my ear. Like what the fuck? Like you saw that in Scary Movie when Omar Epps did that shit. Put his ear up to like a fucking glory hole or something. I don't think it was a glory hole. I think it was kind of high on the stall to be a glory hole. He had like a hum or something, but anyway. And he got stabbed in the ear. It's like, why would you do that? Put my point ear right up to this hole. Like, I don't. First off, I don't go in bath. I don't use stalls. Like, I've been in stalls where I've seen holes cut in through the stall door. And I'm like, nope. Because I'm like, this ain't that kind of party. They don't. I'm sitting there. Also, for one thing, somebody could look through because I've been in stalls like at truck stops where I've seen holes like this big, like this big, fucking, uh, in the hole. I'm in the stall door. I'm like, what the fuck? It almost look like it's been cut with like a blowtorch or something. What the fuck is this? And I like, or something on me like wood, but then they use it like a square or something. But I was like, I walked. I remember once I walked in one. It was in uh, what is it? Winter Park, I think, Florida. And I went in the stall, and it was whole like because I had to take a shit, and I just like sat down, didn't see the hole at first, and I sat down. I was like, a hole like right. No one was in the other stall. But I was like, what the fuck? It is a hole. You could literally like if someone sat down in the stall, they literally could like look and just see me. And I got up. I was like, oh hell no. And I looked and went to the next stall. And there was no holes, and so I used that one. I was like, okay, this is the glory hole stall. I was like, I'm not there sitting there. Somebody think, oh, you in there? That means that. Cause I guess they be thinking, why would someone sit in the stall with a hole that goes so someone in the other stall can see you? Like, oh, this is for the people doing this shit, doing this freaky shit. So okay. So because I didn't want any like a penis to come through there, man. Just rip it. But the funny thing was, cause I was eating, it was like a Subway in there at that truck stop, and I was sitting there, and I ate like a sub, and I was sitting and I was talking to a friend of mine at the time on the phone, and some like two girls walked in, and they were dressed very, mind you, this was like 11 some midnight. Two chicks, well, they looked young. I said looked like they at least, well, as at the most, in their early 20s, and I'm like, and the way they were dressed too, I was like, and mind you, this was like a Wednesday. Like they were just kind of like one girl had like shorts on with her booty cheeks at the bottom poking out. Another chick had like I don't know, it like almost like her nipple was about to be showing. Like if she would have jumped, her titties would have popped out. And like even jumped like 2 inches off the ground, her titties was just, and they all had the skin tight clothes on. Like I said, this was like a Wednesday. And I remember sitting there, I was like, why they? I was like, oh, at first I thought they went to like a club or something. I said, wait, it's Wednesday. Like, what club are they going to? I said, plus, I said, we are like on the outskirts of, I guess, the city or whatever. So I was like, what? I said, but it could be a club out there. I mean, I would live in Oklahoma for years. It was clubs on the outside of the city. So I was like, could be. And I saw, when I remember I came out of when I was coming out of the stall, one of the girls was in the bathroom. And I was like, at first I thought, because for a split second I said, oh shit, am I in the wrong bathroom? Because it didn't have signs like on the door. They had signs like before you enter like the hallway to get to the bathroom, and it said male on it had male on this side and female on the other side. So I was like, oh, wait, this must be the male. But then I was like, but then I thought that for like a second, and then oh wait a minute, there's urinals in here, and when I walked up, she was like, hey, she had like a real country accent, and I was like, oh, it's because I was like assumed that the female bathroom was out. I said, oh, the female bathroom though, And she's like, nah, I think they cleaned it already earlier. And that's all she said. And I was like, all right. And then I just washed my hands because I was like, I'm not going, oh, what are you doing in here? Like, I said, that ain't none of my business. That ain't my job. I was like, people who work here, they want to come here and ask her that. That's their job. That's their business. And I ended up walking out. And I saw like another truck driver going there, guy, older guy going there. So I was like, and me thinking like, cause you had to walk when you walked out, you was facing the female bathroom. I said, oh, they not cleaning it. Cause I saw a woman go in there. She walked past me when I was walking out, and when the female bathroom, so I was like, what is she doing? And that was the first thing I thought. I said, oh, is she going in there with that glory? Cause then I'm like, is she a prostitute? Because I have been in this short time I did truck driving. I have been propositioned by a few, they call them, I forget what they call those, like prostitutes who hang around truck stops. Like something, is it something lizard? Lizard, cat, or cat, maybe like I forget what they call them, but I've been propositioned a few times driving. And I mean, at the time I was driving with somebody else. I was doing team driving, so I was like, I couldn't do that anyway. Plus, I was like, I'm thinking myself, I don't know you, and let you in my cab, and you might put me at gunpoint, like tie my hands or handcuff me or whatever, and take my shit and then get out and leave. Well, for all I know, you know how to drive a truck and kill me in here and then drive off with my truck. Take the get some go take goes when they take the cargo, and then you drive the truck up. Of course, the truck I was driving had like GPS embedded inside, so you couldn't just like steal that. That was like you had to like, get a mechanic to go like inside, like around the engine compartment to find like the take the GPS transmitter. But I was like, I ain't gonna lie, it was one time. It was a chick. She was fine as hell. I was golly, because when she walked up to me, it's one of those chicks where if you don't pull chicks like that and they approach you, you immediately get defensive and like something is wrong. Like you're like, why are you walking up to me? Like, why are you talking, flirting with me? Like, what is going on? Like, you trying to lure me somewhere to get me robbed? Like, that's what this is. But yeah, that was like, oh, because I was like, what is she doing? And the female bathroom wasn't out, and I was like, that was a glory hole in the bathroom. That's not the only glory hole I've seen. And like, I've seen some in not even truck, not just truck stop bathrooms, but like those rest stops. I've seen glory holes in those. I'm like, it's like, I mean, families stop at those truck stops too, but I think it's mostly truckers. They spend the night and stuff over there. But I was like, rest stops. You truck drivers spend the night, but then also families I've seen stop there and be sleeping. So I was like, who the fuck put a glory hole, in this stall, in this bathroom? Like what the fuck? And it's usually like one of the last stalls. So I started just avoiding those. Usually I go to those because I don't like people being on both sides of me when I'm in a stall. But it's usually like the last stall. So I was like, and when you walk in the bathroom, it's like the last one. So I was like, yeah, I just started just avoiding those. So even now, it's like instinctively, I just don't go like the last stall. I once I go in a handicap stall, and it was one I was like, really, a handicap stall? I went in there because I needed space. Cause I was trying to change clothes, and I wanted, more space. And I was like, I took my shirt off and happened to see it was a glory like It didn't make sense though, cause it was like right by the toilet dispenser, the toilet paper dispenser. And I was like, how do you? I said, you must have a long dick because it was like that thing. The toilet paper dispenser was probably like this thick, probably like this thick. And then you'd be up against your hip. So I was like, the only thing you could get in was really like your head, unless you got a long dick. I was like, that didn't make any sense. But I was like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe they moved it or something. But I was like, why is there a hole still there? Like you think they would put like a piece of metal of saying welded in there because it was a metal door, metal like stall. But anyway, hope you enjoyed my reaction, everyone. If you did, make sure to hit that thumbs up button down below. Make sure to subscribe if you're new here. Hit that bell. You'll be notified when I upload new videos. Comment down below. Share this video. See y'all next time. Peace.